Three women are walking up a hill outside Jerusalem just before dawn. It is Sunday, the first day of the week, in the third year of the reign of the new emperor Tiberius's successor. The women are carrying spices wrapped in linen. They have been awake since long before sunrise. They have not eaten. They are climbing toward a tomb sealed by a stone, larger than 3 men can move, and when they arrive, the stone is gone. The tomb is open. The body they came to anoint is not there. We will come back to that morning. We will come back to that stone. But not yet, because the empty tomb on Easter morning is not the first time God reached into a casket and brought someone back. It is the 8th time. There is a long, strange, almost unknown pattern that runs through the entire Bible, a pattern of dead people sitting up. Sitting up. 8 resurrections, 3 in the Old Testament, 4 under the public ministry of Jesus, 1 performed by Jesus on himself, and 2 more performed by the apostles after Jesus was gone. For the next 25 minutes, we are going to look at every single one of them. In order. With names. With dates. With the specific words that left God's mouth, or the prophet's mouth, in the moment when life came back. This is not a video about miracles in general. This is not a video about hope as a feeling. This is not a video about Sunday school flannel graph. This is a video about the only pattern in the Bible that the God of the universe seems unable to stop repeating. The pattern of speaking into a body that has stopped breathing and watching it start again. Pay attention to this, because the pattern is going to escalate. And by the end, you will see that every previous resurrection in Scripture was a rehearsal for something much larger. We begin in the 9th century before Christ. A foreign woman is sitting in the doorway of a one-room mud brick house in the coastal Phoenician town of Zarephath. The land is in the 3rd year of a drought so brutal that the Hebrew prophet Elisha, the man who called the drought down, has been hiding in her home for over a year. She has fed him from a jar of flour and a cruse of oil that never empty. She is a widow. She has 1 son. And one morning her son falls sick, and within hours he stops breathing. She comes out of the back room with the boy in her arms. Her face is twisted with the kind of grief that does not weep. It accuses. She accuses Elijah. She says, "What have I to do with thee, O thou man of God? Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance and to slay my son?" And Elijah does something no one has ever done before. He takes the boy out of her arms. He carries him up the outside stairs to the loft where he sleeps. He lays the body on his own bed. And then, in a moment that no other prophet had ever attempted in the history of Israel, he stretches himself out, full length, on top of the dead boy, 3 times, and cries to the Lord, "O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again." And the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. The Hebrew word for soul there is nephesh. It does not mean the immortal soul of later philosophy. It means the breath of life, the animating spark, the thing that leaves the body when the body stops. Elijah is not making a metaphor. He is asking God to put the breath back, and God does. This is the first resurrection recorded in Scripture. And the pattern is established. A grieving mother, a small body, a prophet who climbs the stairs. And 1 word from God. Move forward roughly 60 years. A wealthier woman, a Shunammite, married, childless, devout, has built a small upper room on the side of her house for the prophet Elisha to stay in whenever he passes through her village. Out of nowhere, the prophet promises her a son. She does not believe him. He says it anyway. Within a year, she is holding a boy. The boy grows. And one summer morning, he is out in the field with his father at the reaping. And he suddenly clutches his head, and he says, "My head, my head." His father carries him home. He sits on his mother's lap until noon, and then he dies. She lays the boy on Elisha's bed in the upper room. She closes the door. She does not tell her husband. She saddles a donkey. She rides hard for Mount Carmel. where Elisha is, and when his servant tries to stop her, she pushes past him. She falls at the prophet's feet, and what she says is one of the most devastating sentences in the Old Testament. "Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" Elisha sends his servant Gehazi ahead with his staff to lay it on the boy. It does not work. Elisha himself rides back with the woman. He goes into the upper room. He shuts the door. He prays, and then he climbs onto the bed and lies on top of the dead boy. Mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. The body warms. He gets up. He paces the room. He climbs onto the bed and lies on the boy a second time. The boy sneezes 7 times and opens his eyes. The Shunammite woman receives her son back. The second resurrection in Scripture, performed by the second prophet, with the second method, but the same God and the same outcome. And then there is a third Old Testament resurrection, and this one is the strangest in the entire Bible. Elisha dies of an illness in his old age. He is buried in a cave tomb. About a year later, a band of Moabite raiders sweeps into the country during the spring campaigning season. A group of Israelite men are out burying one of their own. They see the raiders coming. They panic. They drop the body into the nearest open tomb they can find, which happens to be the tomb of Elisha. And they run, the text says. When the man was let down and touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood up on his feet. A man comes back to life because his body touched a dead prophet's bones by accident, with no prayer, no command, no method, no plan. The author of the books of Kings tells the story in 2 sentences and moves on. It is the only resurrection in the Bible performed by accident. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing 9 centuries later, repeats the story without explanation. He is as puzzled by it as we are, but he does not edit it out. Nobody edits it out, because the people who copied the scrolls of Kings believed the pattern was real, even when it broke their own categories of how God works. 3 resurrections so far. 3 different prophets. 3 different methods. 3 different centuries. But the same God, repeating the same impossible thing. Before we move from the Old Testament into the New, I want to ask you something. Of these first 3, Elijah climbing the stairs at Zarephath, Elisha lying on the Shunammite's son, or the man falling into the tomb of dead bones, which one stayed with you? Tell me in the comments. Read every reply. And if you are tracking the pattern with me, subscribe before you lose it. We are about to look at what happens when the same God who breathed life back into a Phoenician boy steps out of a synagogue and into a small Galilean funeral. We are in the year roughly 28 AD. A funeral procession is leaving a small walled town on the edge of the plain of Esdraelon. The town is called Nain. The dead man is the only son of a widow. According to first-century Jewish custom, the body is being carried out on an open bier, wrapped in linen, surrounded by paid mourners and most of the town. The widow walks at the front. She has no other children. She has no other family. Her son was the last thing standing between her and absolute poverty. And a Galilean carpenter walks out of the crowd, sees her face, and the text says he is moved with compassion, not pity. The Greek word is splachnizomai, moved at the level of the gut, the deep organs, the place where grief actually lives. He says one word to her, "Weep not." He walks up to the bier. He touches it, which under Jewish ceremonial law makes him instantly unclean. The pallbearers freeze, and he speaks to the corpse. "Young man, I say unto thee, arise." And the dead man sits up and begins to speak. The text does not record what he said. The text only records that Jesus took him by the hand and gave him back to his mother. This is the first resurrection performed publicly by Jesus of Nazareth. And it is the first time in Scripture that the resurrection requires no prayer. Elijah prayed. Elisha prayed. Jesus speaks. Move forward a year or a month. The Gospels do not always agree on chronology, but the location is Capernaum, on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. A man named Jairus, a ruler of the local synagogue, has a 12-year-old daughter who is dying. He runs through the streets to find Jesus. He finds him. He begs him to come. Jesus starts walking back with him. They are interrupted on the road by a bleeding woman who touches Jesus' robe. While Jesus is dealing with her, a servant runs up from Jairus' house. "Thy daughter is dead. Trouble not the master." Jesus turns to Jairus. 3 words in the Greek. Me phobou. Monon pisto. Stop being afraid. Only keep trusting. When they arrive at the house, the professional mourners are already wailing. Jesus puts them out. He takes only the parents and 3 of his disciples into the back room. He takes the cold hand of the girl. He speaks 2 words in Aramaic, the language she heard her mother speak. Talitha, cumi. Little girl, arise. She gets up. She walks. Jesus tells the stunned parents to give her something to eat because she is going to be hungry. 3 NT resurrections from Jesus so far, if you count Nain plus Jairus' daughter. But the most famous one is yet to come, and it is going to break every previous category. Bethany. About 2 miles east of Jerusalem. Approximately the spring of 33 AD, a man named Lazarus has been dead for 4 days, decomposing in a cave tomb sealed with a stone. His sisters Mary and Martha have already wrapped him in spices and grave clothes. They have already accepted it. They have already begun to forget the sound of his voice. Jesus arrives. Martha meets him on the road. She says, "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died." Jesus says nothing for a long moment. Then he weeps. The shortest verse in the English Bible is 2 words, and it lands here. Jesus wept. They walk to the tomb. Jesus orders the stone removed. Martha protests, "Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days." The Greek word she uses is ose. He reeks. There is no metaphor in this sentence. It is a description of decomposition. The stone is removed. Jesus prays out loud, not because he needs to, but so that the crowd can hear who he is talking to. And then he cries with a loud voice 3 words, "Lazarus, come forth." And a 4-day dead man walks out of his own tomb, still wrapped in his grave clothes. The pattern has now reached its absolute peak in human history. From a Phoenician boy who died that morning to a 4-day rotting corpse in a tomb. Each story raises the stakes higher than the last. And every single one of them is just a rehearsal, because 3 weeks later, a Galilean carpenter is dead. He is wrapped in linen by 2 members of the Sanhedrin, who have begun to follow him in secret. He is laid in a borrowed tomb belonging to a rich man named Joseph of Arimathea. A stone is rolled across the entrance. A Roman seal is set on the stone. A detachment of soldiers is posted to guard it. He has been beaten beyond recognition. He has been pierced in the side with a spear. His feet have been examined by a Roman centurion, who, the historian Tacitus tells us, would have personally answered with his own life if the prisoner was not dead. And on Sunday morning, 3 women walk up the hill carrying spices. The stone is rolled away. The body is gone. 2 beings in shining garments are sitting where the body had been. They say 6 words that change human history. He is not here, he is risen. This is the 8th resurrection in the Bible. But here is what most people miss. Every previous resurrection, the widow's boy at Zarephath, the Shunammite's son, the man in Elisha's tomb, the young man at Nain, the daughter of Jairus, and Lazarus of Bethany, every one of them eventually died again. They came back, lived out their lives, and went back into the ground. Their resurrections were temporary reversals. Loans. Jesus is the only one who never died again. In the early 3rd century, the church father Origen wrote that all the prior resurrections were, as it were, rehearsals. The Greek word he used was proimion, which means a prelude, an overture, the music played before the curtain goes up. Every prophet who climbed the stairs, every funeral that was interrupted, every tomb that was opened, every breath that returned. It was all the orchestra warming up for one Sunday morning when the corpse rose for good. And the pattern does not stop at Easter. In Acts chapter 9, the Apostle Peter is called to the town of Joppa on the Mediterranean coast. A beloved disciple named Tabitha, known to the Greek-speaking believers as Dorcas, has just died of an illness. The widows of the town are weeping over her body in an upper room, showing each other the clothes she made for them. Peter goes in, puts them all out, kneels down, and says two words in Aramaic. Tabitha, cumi. Tabitha, arise. She opens her eyes. 11 years later, in the city of Troas, the Apostle Paul is preaching late into the night. A young man named Eutychus is sitting in a third-story window. He falls asleep. He falls out. He is picked up dead. Paul goes down, embraces him, and says, "Trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him." Eutychus' lives, 2 more. 8 total resurrections in Scripture. And the pattern is the same all the way through. God, or someone speaking in the authority of God, walks into a room of grief and speaks a word that should not work, but does. Now stay with me, because there is one more thing. In modern medicine, clinical death is defined as roughly 4 to 6 minutes of cessation of brain function before irreversible damage sets in. After that window, recovery is biologically impossible. The Cleveland Clinic and the New England Journal of Medicine both define resurrection as outside the bounds of clinical possibility. Lazarus, on day 4, would have been past every threshold modern science can describe. There is no naturalistic explanation. There is only the Word. When you look at every resurrection in the Bible from Zarephath to the empty tomb, you see 3 things that most people miss. First, God's response to death is always personal. It is always to a specific name. The widow at Zarephath, the Shunammite, the young man of Nain, the daughter of Jairus, Lazarus, Tabitha, Eutychus. Death is never a category in the Bible. It is always a person. And God always names them when He brings them back. Second, every resurrection in Scripture before Easter was temporary. It was alone. It was a rehearsal. The resurrection of Jesus is the only permanent one, and according to the Apostle Paul writing to the Corinthians, it is the first one of a long sequence that ends with you and me being raised the same way. And third, the voice that called Lazarus out of his tomb is the same voice that whispered Talitha cumi to a 12-year-old girl, the same voice that said, "Weep not," to a widow walking behind her son's bier, the same voice that prayed over a Phoenician boy on a stranger's upper room bed in the 9th century before Christ. And it is the same voice that, one day, will call your name, and the rehearsal will be over. Which of these 8 resurrections moves you the most? Is it the widow at Zarephath, the first one? Is it the Shunammite mother who would not accept the loss? Is it Jairus pushing through a crowd for a daughter already pronounced dead? Or is it the empty tomb, where the pattern finally became permanent? Tell me below. We read every comment. And if this is the kind of Bible content you want more of, quiet, careful, cinematic, and as honest as we can make it, subscribe before you go. 2 new episodes every week, Wednesday and Sunday. Because in the end, the entire Bible is a long, escalating argument with one specific enemy. And that enemy has rules. God breaks them.